Joe Harding is a man in his late 70s. By now, he should be enjoying his well-deserved retirement. But that's not the case at all.
Oh, it's gonna light up and vibrate.
His pension deposits have stopped coming nearly at the same time that his mortgage rate suddenly tripled. He's trying to discuss the situation with his bank manager, Chuck. But the man is just useless. Joe tells him about the foreclosure notice he's received.
A foreclosure notice.
Which means he could soon lose his home. Instead of helping him, Chuck is evidently focused on himself. That's because it was Chuck himself who once reassured Joe about that mortgage and said the rate was very unlikely to go up. Now he's saying that the yellow notice is no biggie.
The red one is more weighty.
It's the red one he should avoid. Of course, he has no practical suggestion on how to do that with zero money coming in. About to lose his patience with this guy, Joe asks if he can talk to someone less stupid.
Could I talk to someone else?
That's when 3 masked men arrive with machine guns and announce their robbery intentions.
We've come to make a withdrawal.
Everyone has to be on the floor and in a specific position. While Chuck begins to freak out, Joe complains of back pain and one of the robbers lets him sit up. They begin to chat and Joe even offers his wallet, but his new friend says they don't take advantage of the elderly.
It is a culture's duty to take care of its elderly.
He does take Chuck's wallet, especially after seeing the yellow notice. The whole thing is over in less than 2 minutes. Reminding everyone that a shootout is always messy, the trio advises them to wait 90 seconds before calling the cops.
Please do not call the police for 90 seconds.
The experience has a very different effect on Chuck, who is now wetting his pants, and Joe, who actually looks a little inspired. Detective Hamer is the one responsible for investigating the robbery. Joe had a chance to get a good look at the robber's neck tattoo, but Hamer talks to him in a patronizing way.
If we need any additional information, then we'll get in contact with you.
And seems to dismiss his contribution as a witness due to his age. Joe's daughter picks him up at the station. His granddaughter, Brooke, is in the car too. She finds it very cool that her grandpa's been in such an adventure, but her mom is not as excited. They have recently moved in with him for financial reasons, which makes him even more worried about that yellow notice. When they get home, he's surprised to see Detective Hamer talking about the robber's tattoo on the news. He says it's their main lead now. Once they find the tattoo artist, they'll get to the criminals in no time. That's exactly what Joe had told him earlier. A few days later, Joe meets his BFFs at the park. Willie and Albert are also retired, and they used to work for the same company as Joe, Wexler Steel. All 3 of them have received an ominous letter about a company announcement they should attend. It has to be about those pension checks, which have also stopped coming for Albert and Willie. So the 3 friends go there together to find out what's going on. And it's actually terrible news. After a huge merger, the company is moving all manufacturing to Vietnam.
To move all manufacturing to Vietnam.
Without any U.S. operations, they no longer have any fiscal responsibility, which means the pension fund was dissolved, and there is nothing that can be done about it. At the diner, the waitress Mitzi gets sad to see her favorite trio of customers looking so defeated. Joe says a lawsuit would probably take longer than they have left to live.
You'll be by the time the settlement comes in.
And without those checks, Willie can barely pay this month's rent. In fact, he can't even afford to order a piece of pie right now. But Mitzi brings one anyway, on the house. She says life is short. Grumpier than usual, Albert thanks her for the reminder.
Well, thanks for the reminder.
Willie and Albert are actually roommates. They live right across from Joe, and he often comes over to watch corny reality shows with them. Tonight, Willie asks him if they'll be all right. Joe says, sure. It all works out in the end.
It always works out in the end.
But we can see he is not that confident in his own words. And then he crosses the street to get home and finds the dreaded red notice. Sadly, Joe is not the only one who has a secret. Willie is in urgent need of a kidney transplant, and his age puts him way down the list. His doctor says dialysis is not working much and his best option would be finding a direct donor among his friends and family.
The dialysis is working marginally.
Willie says he'll ask them, but we all know it's a lie. He's embarrassed to cause so much trouble to anyone he loves. But let's talk about real pain now. As a music teacher, Albert is sometimes required to endure more than his ears can take. Finally bursting into honesty, he's relieved to see that his student also hates it.
I don't even like this thing.
He explains the situation to the boy's grandma, a woman named Annie, and she doesn't care either. It turns out she used to see Albert perform as a musician back in the day, and the kid was only an excuse to get closer to her crush. Now Joe is waiting for Brooke outside her school to walk her home as he always does. She's proud to show him a biology test she aced and casually reminds him of their deal. If she manages to get straight A's, he'll get her a puppy.
Get straight A's, you get a puppy.
In the evening, Willy celebrates his birthday at the $4 Thursday buffet. Joe takes the opportunity to share his thoughts about becoming a bank robber. The other two laugh at the idea, but he shows them the red notice. The bank will take his home in 30 days.
They're taking my house.
He has nothing to lose. In fact, even if he gets caught, that means 3 meals a day and a healthcare upgrade. Later on, Willy calls Joe to tell him what his birthday wish was. He wants to be able to see his family more often and eat more pie.
I want to have a piece of pie.
Lots more. So he wakes Albert and says Joe's on the phone. Albert says he doesn't talk to criminals.
I don't talk to criminals.
But we can see he is also thinking about it. Time for some training then. Albert is making cordon bleu tonight, but his outlaw friends tell him to stay in the car while they get the ingredients at the store. Surely you know what they mean by get. Suspecting the same, Albert disobeys their instructions and goes in as well. When Willy and Joe walk out barely able to hold the stolen goods inside their jackets, the security guard is right behind them, and their getaway driver is gone. Once you've turned to a life of crime, that's all you know now. So Joe grabs a ladies' ride in the parking lot and tries to escape with Willy in the basket. In the store, Albert is also approached and makes it worse by running away, even knowing he hasn't taken anything. After a completely pathetic chase, the 3 senior citizens are lectured by the store manager, who ends up giving them coupons for their next purchase. Now, such a fiasco must have brought these two back to their senses, right? Wrong. All they take from the experience is that they need professional help, which means Brooke's father. Not a criminal himself, but their only acquaintance who can put them in touch with one. Meanwhile, Albert is at the store again, making it clear that he's not stealing anything. And guess who works there? Annie, his fan. Firmly committed to being honest, Albert tells her to stop with the flirting. He's not looking for a relationship.
You're not looking for a relationship, is that right?
That's exactly right.
Annie doesn't take no for an answer and convinces him to come over for dinner. Dinner ends up turning into something else. In the morning, Albert is in a much better mood. He's even nice to Mitzi, who wonders what the hell happened. It doesn't last, though. The newspaper says the Wexler Pensioners Fund will be used to pay current debtors,
To be distributed to current debtor.
and the liquidation will be managed by the same bank that is about to take Joe's home, which is also Willy and Albert's bank. Poor Mitzi comes back at the wrong time and gets to see the usual Albert again. As she leaves, he takes a deep breath and tells them he's in.
I'm in.
With one condition. He doesn't want to rob just any bank. He wants to rob their bank. So now the 3 musketeers are at the Cameo pet shop. They're talking to the expert, Jesus Garcia, and smoking pot to prove to him they are bad boys. Not sure of what to make of these oddballs, Jesus agrees to help them if they promise to be careful. Their time frame is set to 20 days from now. Jesus explains that bank robbing is an art form like any other, and it takes lots of observation and study. As they are all WBS clients and elderly, they're already expected to show up all the time. That makes the reconnaissance visits even easier. The getaway car is very important. It's always best to pick something no one suspects. With a little help from Annie, they also try to get in shape as much as possible. If the people at the bank know they're dealing with a bunch of tired grandpas, they'll be done for. So they gotta make the most of the masks and make everyone believe this is a gang of young thugs. Another crucial part is the alibi. The date is set to Wednesday the 14th, so it coincides with the lodge fundraiser. Our bandits then volunteer to be in the t-shirt committee. According to Jesus, police response to a robbery in progress is from 2 to 4 minutes, so they must wrap it up faster than that. Their first rehearsal does not go well, but a man whose name is Jesus can afford to have a little faith. And now for the guns. It's very clear that they are only there for the worst-case scenario, especially considering that they're horrible shots. Albert can barely fire a gun. Finally, it's their big day. Joe is training his ex-son-in-law on fathering, starting from breakfast. This guy is the family's backup plan to help raise Brooke. If things go south today, Joe's daughter shouldn't have to do all this alone. Not that anyone consulted her before, of course. She is very surprised to see her ex in the kitchen, making breakfast for their daughter. Brooke herself is totally shocked. On their way to school, she asks Joe if her dad went nuts or something. He answers that he's just realized he's been missing out on so much. Then he gets a bit emotional, and the girl asks him what's going on.
What's going on with you today?
He changes the subject quickly and reminds her of the carnival today. Brooke's dad can tell Joe is up to no good, and he tries to talk about it after she goes in. But the old man won't take the advice. He only tells him to be prepared for anything. At the carnival, everyone is wearing the same bright yellow shirts they've manufactured in Annie's backyard. It looks like a convention of minions. A little after 2 p.m., our men are in position. Joe tells his friend Paul that he's going to check in at the ticket office. Albert is at the cotton candy booth, and Willy is wearing a Frankenstein suit. 15 minutes later, they're in the car wearing suits. Joe says he decided to use blanks instead of real bullets. No one should get hurt today.
No one needs to get hurt by accident.
They park the vehicle right outside the WBS building and put on their Rat Pack masks. So much for hiding their age. As they walk in, Joe fires a blank into the air and everyone screams. He begins to address the hostages, but then Albert takes over, and it turns out he's a natural. His opening speech gets the ball rolling smoothly, and even the security guard decides these are professionals, not to be messed with. Chuck immediately takes the same position the previous robbers had requested, beautifully trained. While Joe and Willy collect the cash, Albert oversees the operation with a stopwatch, letting them know how long they have left. Everything is going according to plan. But when a little girl offers her doll to Willy, he feels bad for her and diverts from the script. Once the teller is no longer closely watched, she presses the silent alarm. The police are on their way there. Willy comes closer to the little girl to tell her that everything will be okay. Leaning down, he feels lightheaded and falls down. Chuck takes the opportunity to reach for the gun the security guard had kicked away. Trying to help Willy, the girl begins to pull his mask off so he can breathe. Joe's comes quickly and helps him stand up. Albert is yelling that they've just hit the 2-minute mark. The three of them are ready to go, but now Chuck has decided he will not be a victim again. He has a gun with real bullets, and he's telling them to drop the money.
Drop the money!
But Albert does not back down. He begins to count to 3, hoping that Chuck will chicken out. He doesn't. Luckily, he's an even worse shot than our guys. He fires a whole round directly at the robbers and still manages to miss them. Albert is so mad, he forgets about the stopwatch and takes his time. He tells Chuck he's about to meet his maker and fires repeatedly at him. Chuck almost dies for real before he says these are just blanks.
Those were blanks, you...
10 seconds later, our boys and their money are safely on the getaway ride. The hard part is over. At night, they celebrate the successful heist with a decent dinner. Willy orders a piece of each pie they have and lots of champagne.
A slice of each.
But when they leave, he suddenly collapses and they must call an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor tells them he won't leave without a new kidney. They go to his room and give him a hard time for keeping the secret from them. On the TV, they see Detective Hamer is on the case. Footage from the surveillance cameras is all over the news. Remember that store manager? He sees that footage too, and it seems familiar. So he calls Hamer to compare the snippets and asks him who runs like that. The detective says he'll need a copy of that. Joe is watching Brooke's game next to her dad when the cruises come screeching. They've already picked up Albert, and the FBI is interrogating Willy at the hospital. And this is when our heroes really shine. Their story is airtight, and the carnival surveillance confirms it all. Joe is wearing a gray flat hat when he heads to the ticket booth around 2 p.m. Getting there, there's no cameras to show him putting it on someone else. So when the police ask, the ticket buyer can't really tell old guys apart. Willy had it easy, simply swapping costumes inside the haunted house. Albert was the most elaborate alibi. The footage proves he spent a whole hour in the bathroom. Hamer does find it hard to believe, but he blames it on diverticulitis. Those stalls are so closely stacked together, the cameras couldn't catch his escape. And then all three got immediately back to the carnival, with Albert sharing the stage with Annie for a karaoke performance no one could miss. Detective Hamer says their plan is almost perfect. If it weren't for the eyewitness, of course. Lined up in wheelchairs, they wait nervously for that little girl to point at the right man. She stops right in front of Willy, but tells Hamer he is not the man she saw at the bank. So now, it's time for Joe to keep his promise. He's at the usual diner with Jesus Garcia, who is giving him that puppy for Brooke. When asked about his commission, he says he wouldn't take advantage of the elderly.
It is a culture's duty to take care of its elderly.
Joe has heard those exact same words before. Realizing Jesus was that bank robber, he asks him about that tattoo. Jesus says it was a fake to send the police barking at the wrong tree. Speaking of the devil, Detective Hamer is here to return some documents. Joe and Jesus look at each other nervously when he begins to play with the puppy, but he doesn't see what's right above the little guy. When they all leave, Mitzi begins to complain about the tip. Not for long, though. And what about Willy's kidney? Well, he's getting a new one from Albert, who admits he's a bit afraid of the procedure. When we see Joe and Willy in dark suits talking about him to a crowd, it really looks like the surgery didn't go that well for him. Thankfully, it's not what it looks like. Albert is standing right next to them, alive and well. In fact, he's getting married. And this is the end.